the Sonic Cinema movie chat. As you can see, I am getting ready for the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday night. Looking forward to actually watching this game, even though it no longer has any weight towards the playoffs. We didn't do enough in the previous weeks of the season to have this mean anything for the playoffs, but I'm nonetheless hoping that they are able to get the last two wins here for a winning season. That's really all I care about right now. I will absolutely take two winning seasons back to back, which has not happened since the 80s. So, it's funny, leading into this week, I kind of needed some underdog sports movies, and so I watched Moneyball. I watched Rudy, which I haven't seen in a while. I watched The Replacements, which I always love. It kind of knows jack about football, but it's still a pretty entertaining movie. And today today was a relatively laid back movie watching day. I had some other stuff to do, but I was able to watch Days of Thunder. And I've always liked that one, even though it's very much the Top Gun model, except this time with Tom Cruise as a NASCAR driver. It does have Nicole Kidman as his doctor, and that's where they met and fell in love. And it's funny watching the movie. It's been, well, I watched it last year, or 2020, I should say, because this is 2022 now. Watching it now, after, I don't know, about a year and a half or so, it's funny because of the fact that the scene where he talks about drafting and he uses the sweetener packets on her leg, couldn't help but think about that in comparison to the animal cracker scene in Armageddon. And let me just say, the drafting wins out. Sorry, that's just kind of how I feel about it. But so I watched that. I watched Uncut Gems, which I kind of, it's another sort of sports movie, but it's not quite the same type of sports movie as the other ones that I watched, like Rudy and Days of Thunder. I don't know what was that made me think about watching it today, but I definitely wanted to check that out. And then I started this year's repertory review series. The bookend filmmaker this year is Jane Campion, and it was funny. I planned on watching either like Portrait of the Lady or The Piano, which I knew The Piano had been on Netflix, but I guess it left Netflix on New Year's Eve. So it's like, well, that didn't really go as planned, so I ended up. But they still have Bright Star, which was a 2009 film that she made about a romance with John Keats and Fanny Braun, and it's a lovely film. It feels very generic in terms of being a period romance. I had seen it before, and it kind of felt that way to me watching it. And I still kind of feel that way. Admittedly, rewatching it after seeing In the Cup for the first time, and in particular seeing The Power of the Dog, it was interesting to see some comparisons with her past work or in her future work in that film, and it's on Netflix. I do recommend it, especially if you're a fan of Ben Whishaw. He's a tremendous actor, and he does a very good job as Keats in that. That review's on Sonic Cinema. Speaking of Ben Whishaw, I finally watched No Time to Die, the most recent Daniel Craig Bond movie, yesterday. Was I missed it in theaters, but I'm glad I was able to get to it for in this sort of middle ground before the Oscars and at the end of the year. Ideally, I wish I could have seen it on the big screen because I think it would have been a really great big screen experience. Overall, I thought it was a pretty good movie, especially as a conclusion to the Daniel Craig era of Bond. I'm very curious to see what is going to be held over from this era versus what the next Bond is going to look like, who the next Bond is going to be. One of the things I didn't mention in my review, I did really like the Billie Eilish song, "No Time to Die." I finally heard that in the context of the movie. That's kind of what I was waiting for, even though it's been out for almost 2 years now. And Hans Zimmer's score, I actually really liked Hans Zimmer's score with it. I was pleasantly surprised by how I felt about that. I think that he did a fairly good job with that movie, and I was kind of impressed by it. So those continue my thoughts on No Time to Die. And you can read my written review on Sonic Cinema. I published it yesterday. This week, you'll definitely get a review for a thriller from IFC called C for Me, which is coming out on Friday. And I'm supposed to be receiving a screener for the 355. And hopefully I'll get that and be able to review that and have that review for you on Thursday. If you paid attention to the last week, I had quite a bit of content. There was obviously my end of year discussion, and which include my favorite films of the year, my favorite performances, my favorite music. Admittedly, No Time to Die doesn't really merit inclusion on too many of those lists, although Daniel Craig is very good in that. I think Hans Zimmer's score is really good. Billie Eilish's song is pretty good. I thought that was a pretty good song for a Bond song. The Daniel Craig Bonds have actually had pretty good songs. The only one I really don't have too much memory of is the Qualm of Solace one. Even the Spectre one, which nobody thought deserved to win the Oscar, I actually thought that was a pretty good song, even though I'm not a huge fan of that movie in general. But you can check out that retrospective on Sonic Cinema. And you can also check out the final episodes of the Sonic Cinema podcast for 2021, where we talk about 1996. Starting off, January is going to be pretty interesting when it comes to the to me podcasting as well as the podcast in general. This Saturday, I'm going to be recording an episode of the Movie Loop podcast, and I'm looking forward to that one. We're actually going to be discussing silent movies, and I'm really excited about that discussion. Because silent films are a genre that really fascinate me, and in an era of film that fascinates me. And I'm really looking forward to talking about that with Carlo. He was on the Sonic Cinema podcast with me last year when we talked about documentaries. And I'm looking forward to having this conversation about silent movies with him. Later on this month, you should be getting my next guest appearance on the Binge Movies podcast. where we rank 5 films from Don Bluth. And that's going to be a pretty entertaining episode to listen to as we go through the first 5 non-Disney films of Don Bluth's career. And I'm really looking forward to sharing that one. It's in addition to being a really entertaining one because Jason does a terrific job on that podcast. If you're not listening to Binge Movies already, be sure to click subscribe and rate that one. It's a really fun series. We go into a lot of things with regards to nostalgia, with regards to what sustains from the 1980s versus what doesn't. We had some really interesting conversations about that in regards to some of the movies that we were in terms of some of the movies we were talking about, and that's gonna be a really interesting. I hope that'll be an entertaining listen to you. For the Sonic Cinema podcast, it's funny, I've been kind of racking my brain about it, and I haven't really been able to solidify time with some of the hopeful guests that I was initially going to have early on in the year. But that's fine because then we can push those back to later times, and it will be pretty good. Hopefully I'll be able to sort of announce some of those dates later and let you know when and what those episodes are going to entail. But so the first episode, and so I've been kind of thinking about, well, what do I want to do for the first episode of the Sonic Cinema podcast this year? And what I'm going to do is actually going to take an opportunity to publish a podcast that I actually guested on, but the podcast project never really got off the ground. So I'm basically going to edit the audio and present it on the Sonic Cinema podcast. And it's a discussion with my friend Marv on the Steven Soderbergh film Kafka. And we recorded it a couple of years ago, and it was a really interesting conversation. And I'm still waiting on that new cut of Kafka to come out. I'm really anxious to see what Soderbergh did to it. I'm really excited about what Soderbergh did to it. And because it's always been one of my favorite Soderbergh films. And so I'm kind of fascinated to finally have that see the live day. But so that's going to be the first episode of the Sonic Cinema podcast for this year. The second one is probably going to be my Sundance Film Festival coverage, which yesterday I finally started to really kind of hunker down and really get an idea of what Sundance for me this year is going to look like. It was always going to be virtual. I couldn't really find a way to justify going to Park City this year, and honestly, with Omicron going around and the way that cases are spiking, I've got a lot of critic friends who are actually opting not to go in person and are going to go back, convert to virtual as it is. And so I was going through my what I've projected to possibly go over when it comes to Sundance this year, and I'm actually really excited about it. It's going to be a lot of genre films. It's going to be a few interesting films with some interesting actors in there. I was working on my sort of curtain raiser piece to talk about sort of like here's what I'm going to be watching, here's where you can watch it, here's when you can watch it, at least in terms of the premiere screenings, both online and in person if you decide to go in person, and if Sundance decides to continue in person. One of the things that was really kind of interesting to me is the fact that it feels like we, as critics, we have fewer opportunities to screen, but we have more time. I mean, I know the time is because of the fact that the virtual festival was running concurrent with the in person festival, so it's going to be a full 11 days as opposed to just a week. But one of the things that was kind of interesting is that we only have 10 premiere screening op tickets and then 15 second screenings to choose from. So we have 25 options when it comes to features. And I know last year I watched at least 30. So that's gonna be interesting to have it limited like that, but at the same time, I'm I'm kind of glad because the week, even though I was basically on my computer the entire time and watching through the app the entire time, it was still it was still pretty busy and it was still pretty hectic week because of the fact that you had to get your screens done in a rapid time, and I was basically trying to fill every minute that I could. And so in that case, it was really kind of interesting to go through that process last year. And this year, looking at, like, I have 9 of my 10 premieres account for, but they only account for like 5 days out of the 11 because I double up on 4 of them, and then one of them is a single day, single film so far. And I mean, that's not including second screens, which is going to make it up to like 3 to 4 movies. And then there are short films I want to watch throughout the festival. But it's really kind of interesting to see how that schedule is going to work. And I actually kind of like it. It gives me a little bit more time to breathe throughout the festival. And it's one of those things where I'm looking forward to it. And next year I am probably going to try to do Park City. We'll see how that goes, but I would like to, because I do want to go to Sundance and be part of that in-person experience. And I think that's going to be a fun one. I'm curious to see based on what I've read about, I'm curious about which movies sort of break out. Admittedly, there's a lot of them that seem to be going more off the beaten path with, as far as mine. And like I said, there were more than a few genre choices on mine. But I'm still really looking forward to that. And I think this is it's gonna be an interesting year for the festival. And I've already got the possibility of one interview lined up. And it's gonna be a lot of fun. So if that works out, and if I happen to get more worked out, I'm I'm doing that, and then I'm doing the Renegade Film Festival in March, which is formerly the Women in Horror Film Festival, which I did which was my last big festival before COVID hit in 2020. And they're coming back. Hopefully, they will continue to be back. I'm curious what that's going to be like. I hope that environment, that experience, sustains along what it was last year. I think or in 2020, I thought that was a wonderful experience, and it was just a wonderful atmosphere, and I hope it kind of stays that way. Let's see. In February, I'm definitely going to do my Oscar discussion, as well as my 10 best films of 2021. By that point, hopefully I'll have seen quite a bit more and enough to really solidify my top 10 films and, see as many of the Oscar nominees as possible, if not all of them. One of the things I'm doing with repertory reviews, which I was talking about earlier, I'm going to make a conscious effort to limit it to 2 movies a month. Just because between work and the podcast and everything else, it was too difficult to keep it up to 3 or 4 movies a month. If I get a break, I might try to do a third one, but I'm gonna try to do it at 2, and I'm looking forward to catching up with some of these filmmakers that I was wanting to do last year and didn't get a chance to do. I didn't see Kurosawa last year. I didn't see a Hitchcock. I didn't see a Zhang Yimou film, and I didn't see a Spike Lee film. In terms of an older film to watch, so hopefully I'll be able to knock all of those out, and then it's going to be interesting to see how many films I can get to, especially now that the bookend list is growing longer and longer. At some point, I'm sure this is going to get to a point where it's like it's going to be nothing but bookend filmmakers. But the more that I do for the bookend filmmakers, the more that I can cross those filmmakers off my list and continue with new ones. So we'll see. It might be a situation where some of them get left off from a year-to-year basis. And then I do want to do Atlanta Film Festival this year. We'll see how that goes. I'm hopeful to continue that one. But there's not really a whole lot that I wanted to do tonight. There's not really a whole lot that I had to say tonight. Tonight's going to be a pretty laid-back episode, mainly because of the fact that I wanted to keep it simple, as well as there's not a whole lot to talk about that I haven't already talked about. So watch out for reviews for C for me, and hopefully the 355 this week. I should be hopefully getting a screener for Belle, the anime film, next week. And then the week after that is Sundance. And I think that's going to be it for this episode of the Sonic Cinema Movie Chat. Hopefully as the year goes on, I'll solidify some more guests to come on, because it has been a while since I've had one on. And we'll kind of go from there. But this is Brian Scuttle from www.sonic-cinema.com. Check out the Sonic Cinema Patreon at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. Click subscribe and follow, rate, review the podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And as always, keep a lookout for the content on www.sonic-cinema.com. Okay, that's it for me tonight. Go Browns.